What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Breakdown. It's Megan Kinna, it's Tino, Fera, back for another week. And my oh my, do we have a lot of lacrosse games to get into. And as mentioned last week, this is the place you want to be for any or all of the action regarding the Junior A leagues across Canada. Megan, we're going to break down, not really break down, we're going to take a look at some of the standings of the Ontario League, the Rocky Mountain League as well. There was a little foreshadowing here. There was a player versus goaltender fight in the Rocky Mountain League that everyone's going to get a look at here, which was very exciting. I don't know when the last time was that I saw something like that. So pretty excited to get that up for the viewers. But of course, we are mostly focused here on the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, and that is where we're going to want to start. There was, again, a lot of action over the last week's worth since we last talked, so let's get right into it here, shall we? And we will kick things off with the new Westminster Salmon Bellies facing off at home against the Burnaby Lakers. Just as we did last week, we are starting off in Queen's Park. Recent NLL champion Lucas Nielsen did not wait long before he got on the board in his season debut. In and out of the net, you'd think he was playing wall ball. My, oh my. Daniel Batiston would then give the Lakers their second lead of the period, which ultimately led to this. Nielsen, again with the cold shoulder, arrest that man. A pass like that should be illegal. Ooh. Jack Bamford scored the first of two straight for Burnaby. These would bring the Lakers back within one goal of the lead. But before the end of the period, Keegan Lady off the end boards, back to himself, and over the goal line. If you asked Keegan Lady if this alley-oop was intentional, I bet you he would say absolutely not, but we are the ones with the microphones, and I say it was intentional. I would disagree, Mr. Lady. 11-8, New West takes this one at home. This was Burnaby's first game since they found their first win of the season in the week prior.
Nice.
A little bit more confidence in their lineup, I think, but you can still see them starting to or trying to figure things out. It was a little bit more of a balanced effort, though, which is something that I've kind of been big on with this team throughout their early season struggles is, if you're going to, try to go through the process like we've talked about with some of these other teams as well, at the very least, like you want to see some contributions throughout the lineup. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense or it doesn't really do a whole lot of good for the team if it's just the same one or two guys consistently putting in these efforts. So I'm seeing that a little bit more for Burnaby in terms of a more consistent effort throughout the lineup, which is promising, and a win will do that for a lot of guys or for a lot of teams. Okay, so Megan, in your experience, we're talking about Lucas Nielsen here and coming back from his NLL rookie season with the Buffalo Bandits. You're someone as well who's played at an ultra high level where the competitiveness is really off the charts. And in this case, tying it specifically to Lucas Nielsen, coming back from Buffalo and coming back into the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, it's still a very competitive league. It's still ultra competitive for a lot of the guys here, but not super comparable when you're used to playing in the NLL playoffs with a team like the Buffalo Bandits. In your experience, going from a level like the World Championships or the other high levels that you've played at, and then having to come home and maybe you're playing in a pickup kind of game or you're just playing with friends, whatever it may be, what is that adjustment period like for you or for Lucas in this case when you have to go from that high level to stepping down ever so slightly?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky, especially going from like a world championship where you're playing teams like Team USA who are top level players, play professionally as well. And then going home and playing just like a pickup game with my friends sometimes, the adjustment is really hard. It can kind of mess with your mind a little bit if you're, thinking, okay, I've got to play my top level when I'm at the World Championship, and then what level do I play when I'm just doing my pickup with my friends, right? So it's probably tricky for Nielsen himself, so yeah.
Yeah, and this is the same Lucas Nielsen that scored 50 goals in the BC Junior A Lacrosse League as well last year. So it didn't take him overly long to adjust here. Like he still puts up 4 points. He had 2 goals and 2 assists, 11 shots on goal as well. So he's still, while I would say there is that adjustment period, it seems like he's picking up right where he left off from last year and some of the NLL games that he played this year as well. Keep your eyes on Aiden McDonald. Now that Lucas Nielsen is back, Aiden McDonald is a guy who is becoming one of the best passers in the entire league. He's such a good facilitator, puts up a ton of points, mostly coming off of primary assists. He is also a righty. He's playing on the same side of the floor as Lucas Nielsen, and you just know they're going to be out there so often together running power plays or in basically any situation when New West has the ball. I would expect Aiden McDonald to just rack up some points. And he's, currently averaging 4.3 points per game, which is pretty incredible. It would not shock me in the coming weeks if that number potentially even doubles, really. We'll see how things go. Caden Lee was very busy in that game as well in net for Burnaby, stopping 50 of 61 shots thrown his way. 61 shots. Oh, my goodness. He is going to be a busy goaltender for the coming weeks and for the rest of this season. That was New West's only game of the week. Of course, they will be playing tonight, as we can take a look now at their next coming games for the next week's worth. They play tonight at home, as they usually do. We're recording on a Tuesday, so I'm not sure if this is going to come out tonight or tomorrow. Regardless, June 10th, tonight they are at home versus the Delta Islanders, and then they will go on the road across the ferry to take on the Victoria Shamrocks Saturday, June 14th. Let's move on to the next one here, and this is one that I am very excited to talk about here, Megan, because the Langley Thunder finally did it.
Let's go.
Oh my goodness. Their days since last win streak ends at 710 calendar days.
Sounds like a good number.
I think we're Langley Thunder fans now.
I have always been. They're my dark horse.
They're okay, great. Yeah. They're your dark horse.
Yeah.
They finally get things done. And curious thing about this, their previous win, 710 days prior to this, was against the Delta Islanders.
There you have it, folks.
So the Islanders started this streak. They also end this streak, unfortunately for them. The only guys that were in Langley's lineup in that last win that were also in the lineup for this one against the Delta Islanders, Temeka Gottfriedson, Ben Gagnon, and Bailey Vanachuk. And the Bailey Vanachuk being in the lineup is a little bit poetic as well, which I'll talk about here in a moment. It was also the Junior A debut of 2025 first overall pick, Parker Doyle. He finishes with 3 assists, 8 shots on goal, so a pretty solid debut. And how about that? As soon as you get your first overall pick back into the lineup, you find yourself in the win column.
Wowee.
Maybe he's the good luck charm.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Cody Malowski last week as well. What will that bring? What kind of success will that bring when he finds himself back into the Langley lineup? And it was a come-from-behind victory as well. So we've talked so much, I feel like a broken record at this point, about the little victories, stacking these things for Langley. This is a win where, while you don't necessarily want to get hung up on the one win, the season is still, we're just about to pass the halfway mark of the season. You can still be pretty pleased with the win here and the way that you got things done, in the fact that they trailed by 3 multiple times in this game. They still find a way to get it done. And they went on to outscore the Islanders 7-2 from the midway point of the second period all the way through to the remainder of the game. And that included holding Delta scoreless in the third period as well, which is a pretty impressive feat. This is the part about Bailey Vanachuk that I wanted to bring up in terms of it being maybe a little bit poetic, that he was in the lineup for their last win against Delta, and he plays a big role in this one as well. He's the one who ties the game at some point in the third period. He'd also then go on to score the game winner with just over a minute left in the game. So, for a senior on this team and a guy that's been through a lot of losing with these guys, I'm sure that just has to feel so good for him and for the coaching staff and for some of these other guys that have also been on this journey with him as well. Like I said, just kind of a poetic feeling. And pretty impressive as well. We talked about Parker Doyle already. The pass on the game winner came from Parker Doyle. So it kind of felt like a little bit of the past, in the sense of Bailey Vanachuk being a senior, and the past coming from the future in the first overall pick, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
Megan, now take us inside that Langley dressing room. Talking about not necessarily wanting to get hung up on the one individual win, but I have to imagine after this extended period of time of there being so much losing and just trying to build the pieces and stick to the process, there has to have been some kind of celebration here.
Oh yeah. I had experience when I was in college, and we didn't win a game for quite some time, and having won one of those games after quite a while, it feels great. So this is probably an exceptional moment for those guys, and I'm super excited for them.
And then, how long do you think until the celebration would wrap up. Like we said, like you don't necessarily want to get too hung up on it. You want to try to pair this up and turn this into something that carries throughout the season. How quickly does the focus change from, all right, guys, congratulations, you got things done. We still have a job to focus on this in the coming days.
I mean, it's probably still happening inside that locker room during that time. They're probably celebrating, and then, hey, let's get back to work.
Absolutely, and especially with that coaching staff as well, Matt Beers, Kermalowski, I would imagine they probably have these guys pretty dialed in. I will say for the Delta side of things, they were without Jared Masnick. He's somebody that we've talked about a ton on this show in terms of his offensive production with this team. And it begs the question for me about myself, did I jinx the Delta Islanders by calling them my dark horse team?
I think you did.
If I did, that's on me. I'll own that. Apologies to the Delta Islanders. I still have them down as my dark horse team. So hopefully that doesn't completely sewer their season. We'll see. But apologies if I played any factor in that. That was also Langley's only game of the week, but they have a brutal sled of games coming up here as we can take a look. Wednesday, June 11th, they'll be on the road taking on the Burnaby Lakers, the same Burnaby Lakers team that beat this Langley team just a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure Langley, now with that winning flavor in their mouths, I'm sure they want to try to get some revenge on the road. They then go back-to-back on Thursday. This time they'll be at home against the Poco Saints before they will wrap up their week on Sunday, another home game where they will take on the Victoria Shamrocks. And Delta as well, that was their only game of the week. And they, talk about brutal schedules coming up here. 4 games here for the Delta Islanders in this next stretch of a week's time. They do play tonight at the time of recording, June 10th. They'll be on the road facing off against the Salmon Bellies. We already talked about that a little bit. They then go back-to-back, playing on Wednesday at home versus the Coquitlam Adnacks. Then they get Thursday off, thank goodness, because they go back-to-back again for the second time this week. Friday, June 13th, they'll be in Poco before they head over to the Swamp to take on the Burnaby Lakers on Saturday, June 14th. Check that. That's a home game. Excuse me. My mistake. Speaking of Coquitlam, next game on the list here is the Coquitlam Adnacks facing off against the Poco Saints. It's a revenge game for Poco, and sure, the Adnacks were missing some guys from their lineup, but then you look down their roster and look who's back. The chef, Ryan Colsey, and he got Coquitlam rolling. It did take a little while before the Saints came marching in. Lincoln Wall is becoming very well known for his crease work, and you can see on a perfect example here why, somehow avoiding with his footwork there. And speaking of Americans playing in the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, Daniel Mahoney, power move, drops his shoulder, twister, bang, in the back of the net. After the teams traded goals in the middle frame, you got to look at this just kid standing off on the side here. He's just behind the glass, standing on the wall somehow, just refusing to let anybody block his sightlines. That's unbelievable. Athleticism to get up there. Oscar Lucas then added an insurance marker. He would lead the way with a hat trick of his own, en route to back-to-back wins for Coquitlam over the Poco Saints. And this was a rematch of a week prior between these two teams. The week prior, of course, was here at the Palace, where Coquitlam took down Poco rather handedly. You might remember that game as the game that featured the hidden ball trick from the Saints. A week later, Coquitlam goes on the road and they take care of business once again, make that 2 straight wins over the Poco Saints. It was also the season debut, as mentioned, of Ryan Colsey after another year at the University of Virginia. This is just such a speedy player. I got a chance to talk with him a little bit last year, and he is just that first step is what a lot of coaches, scouts, players talk about when they talk about Ryan Colsey. Translates so well to the field game. He adapted really well last year to the box game, and it looks like he's pretty much picked up right where he left off. Right where he left off. And talking about some of the guys that Coquitlam was missing in this game due to some Team Canada tryouts. So they were playing without the likes of Ben Coghill, Jordan Reed, Parker Kennedy, Nathan Chalmers, and Jack Olson, all out of their lineup. Wow. But they still put on a show in Coquitlam. It was a little bit closer than the previous week, but these guys bared down when it mattered the most. I want to ask you then, Megan, when we talk about Coquitlam, when we talk about them missing as many guys as they are, but they still have this depth to be able to get the job done, regardless of who's in the lineup. And we've seen that over the years with this core group that's been with this team for quite some time. How do you balance the emotions leading into a game when you know there are so many notable omissions from your lineup, but you still ultimately have a job that you have to get done?
Yeah, I mean, it's just trusting the people who are behind you and trusting the people who are on your team and being able to, even though these guys aren't with us during this game, we've got to step up to the plate and maybe have some fresh faces step up to the plate too. So, yeah, it's going to be really good that they came out with this win. It's pretty awesome, even with all the omissions from the roster.
Yeah, I think like we talk about the depth of this team. Just over the years, like so much talk about Coquitlam and their culture. I think very much so they believe in like the next man up mentality, the what's next kind of mindset, and I think we saw that a lot in this game here. As mentioned as well, Oscar Lucas just continues to put up numbers since being dealt to this team, and he has himself a hat trick in this one, including the empty netter, which would be the ultimate insurance marker. Poco did have a much better showing in this game compared to the previous. I think like a slow start has been something that's kind of stifled this team a little bit, but they found a way, like while they still did have that slow start in this game, they battled back. They make it 3-3 after trailing 3-0 in the opening period. And they score a goal in the final minute of the second period as well, and the opening minute of the third period. So they were finding these little windows of momentum that they were able to hang on to. But yeah, like we said, the Adanacs just flexing their depth muscle to the extreme, in my opinion. And a bit of a crazy stat that I found. So Josh Mills was held without a point in this game against Coquitlam. There was a time earlier this season that he was held like off the score sheet, but it was the game against Burnaby where he had the early fight. He really only played like 5 minutes of game time. So I don't entirely count that towards this stat. So not including that game earlier this year against Burnaby, the last time that Josh Mills was held pointless in a game was July 11th, 2023 against that same Coquitlam Adanacs team. So I think that also kind of speaks to their depth, their defensive prowess, that they see Poco's star forward and they're able to completely neutralize him to the point where he's not even getting an assist. Like, he's a goal scorer first and foremost, but he's not even able to put up a point in that game. I think that's just outrageous from the Coquitlam side of things.
Wow.
I mean, again, it was kind of a lighter week. Teams playing just one game throughout the league. But Coquitlam had that one, and they will go on now to play 2 in the coming week. They will go away. They're going to be on the road in Delta on Wednesday, June 11th, to take on the Islanders, before they will get a couple of days off and play at home against the Nanaimo Timbermen here at the Palace. I'm sure they'll be fired up to get back on home floor and try to take care of business against Nanaimo for the second time this year. Speaking of Nanaimo, they took on the Burnaby Lakers on Saturday. That was June the 7th, 2025, in case you were wondering about the year as well, just to make sure that's as clear as possible. This was a game where Nanaimo, for my money, put on a show, both offensively and defensively, as well as in terms of their goaltending as well. They gave Keegan O'Kino the day off, so Boston McDonald comes in to man the crease for the Timbermen. And it was like every time that they would allow a goal, they're scoring in bunches. They're scoring at the very least one more. They're scoring oftentimes 2 or 3 more. They're kind of going in these stretches of answering back. And defensively, they wouldn't really allow Burnaby to grab and maintain momentum. Of course, Burnaby's able to get a few goals throughout this game, but it wasn't really too often that the Nanaimo would allow them to maintain that momentum for any extended period of time. And just kind of going down for some examples of that, the Lakers score to make it 2-1. The Timbermen then go on to score the next 4 straight goals. The Lakers then score to make it 6-2 later on. The Timbermen would score the next 6 straight. So you kind of see where this is heading from there. And the score was 12-2 before Burnaby would get any pair of goals together. So you kind of see the dominance on both sides of the floor that we're talking about here. As mentioned, Boston McDonald comes in, giving Keegan O'Kino the night off, and he puts up an .870 save percentage, which is, I always I feel for the backup goaltenders pretty often, in the sense that they're oftentimes going 4 games between their next start. So to be able to come in and give their starter a night off and still put up really solid numbers, an .870 save percentage, is nothing to laugh about for Boston McDonald, and clearly giving his team a chance to win, and that was not the last bit of action that he saw in Nanaimo's stretch of games here.
Cool
Jeremy,
name. He's got a great name too.
Boston McDonald.
Like,
yeah,
are you kidding?
that's on the all name team, I would say.
All name team
for sure. Jeremy Woodrick also just continues to pile up points. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later on in Nanaimo's last game of the weekend, but I got a chance to see him like up close and personal this weekend. That is a large human. He is like 6'4", like 230, something like that. That is a large human. Almost always the biggest guy on the floor, I would say, and is just putting up crazy numbers so far this season. And you know what? Actually, let's just get into that right now. Jeremy Woodrick, like talking about his size, 6'4", 230, at least that's what he's listed at on the BC Junior website. But with that, he's not just an interior guy. He's also somebody who is scoring from the outside, like he's facilitating, he's getting guys open, like he's kind of doing everything in that regard on the offensive side of the ball. Are there any players that come to mind for you, maybe that you've played with, that maybe aren't necessarily like that size, but have that physical presence, have that ability to kind of be that triple threat of a shooter, a passer, somebody that can clear space? Like, is there anybody that comes to mind that you maybe have played with or against that fits that mold?
100%. I mean, the first person that comes to mind is Dana Dobie. She is a triple threat in all cases. She's able to do the most and is definitely that presence, not only as a physical like player, but she can also lead so well, and it's just so amazing being on a team with her. It's incredible.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff. I'm glad you mentioned her. She was somebody that I got to watch. Like, talk about seeing somebody like up close and personal for the first time. Like, the Worlds in 2024 in September was the first time I got to see her live, and just seeing some of the stuff that she's able to do is just insane.
Yeah.
Andrew Bowman is another guy for Nanaimo, and Ty Pilkington as well. They both put up 6 points each in that game. Again, just flexing their offensive muscles, this Nanaimo team. For Burnaby, considering their position currently in the standings, I don't think this is one that they would just simply look at the score at the end of the game and just say like, hey, let's park this one, let's move on, like it wasn't our night. Because I do still think there's some learning lessons that can be taken from a game like this. And considering where they are in the standings, considering where they are in terms of being like a rebuilding team, I think that's something that they're likely looking to take from a lot of these games, even if they are rather lopsided losses. If there are any positives to take for Burnaby from this game, we'll look at the third period here. They were able to outscore Nanaimo 5-4. You know, like maybe, I'm sure some people would say Nanaimo at that point is taking their foot off the gas. I don't think Burnaby cares about something like that. It's still the consistent efforts. You know, they outscore this team in a period of the game. I think that's something for them to be able to take and build off of here.
For sure.
All right, moving on to Poco. Moving on to Poco versus Nanaimo. Nanaimo had 2 straight games, and they would go on to play the Poco Saints John Bailey Arena, where Nanaimo would play the second half of a back-to-back. I think they forgot what time the game started, though. It was 6-1 by the end of the first period. Poco showed up on time this time around. Andrew Cowan early opens the scoring on the power play. He can do more than just hidden ball tricks, clearly. Then Parker Malott just inside the post. The Saints would score on their first 3 shots of the game. The second is where things got a little bit dicey for the Saints. Jeremy Woodrick, we've already talked about him, with the goal and a right hook. Not sure which of those injected more nervousness into the Poco Saints, but by the end of the period, they would only lead by 2. That looked like a stiff right hook from Woodrick, for my money. Into the third period, Timberman pressing. After Woodrick notched another, the captain, Andrew Bowman, fires and scores with Ashton Brown screened in front. Don't think he had any chance of seeing that one. Suddenly, it's a 1-goal game, leading to this, the eventual game winner. Keegan O'Kino doesn't like it. On the other hand, Daniel Mahoney and Josh Mills seem to really like it. Lacrosse with friends, what a combo. Saints avoid disaster 11-9, and they end their 4-game losing streak. This, to me, Megan, felt like a game where Poco was exercising some demons. And what I mean by that is, like I've talked about already in this episode and previous episodes, about some of their struggles being special teams, starting on time, maybe not, I know it's a cliche, but maybe not playing a full 60, like having gaps in the game where they kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit here. There were moments of, I mean, first of all, they start on time. Second of all, they get a couple power play goals, including their first of the game from Andrew Cowan, which we just saw there a moment ago. But I mean it in the sense of in the times, especially during the second period and early in the third, when Nanaimo is pressing. Like, I think they were the team that started a little bit late to this game, but they start to press and it gets, like I said, dicey for Poco. And it looks like the comeback is more or less inevitable at that point. They're able to kind of bend but not break. They're able to stick with it and ultimately get things done. And like I said, end that 4-game losing streak. Like I mentioned, like third period, maybe some nerves from Poco, but Lincoln Wall, who is somebody who has just been Mr. Consistent for this Poco Saints team. He's only a second year as well. He's so young in this league, and he's just coming into this game, he was actually leading the team in points. And for a second year to be able to do that, especially when you have guys on the same side of the floor of you, like Andrew Cowan and Josh Mills, guys that consistently put up a lot of points. For a second year to be putting up those kind of numbers is pretty impressive. And he had 2 massive goals in the third period. One that ended this Nanaimo scoring run that lasted 15 plus minutes, and then another one after Nanaimo got back within 1. So timely goals for Lincoln Wall and for Poco. As mentioned, Daniel Mahoney gets the eventual game winner with 4.5 minutes left. That was a big goal for him. He had a big weekend, actually, putting up some big goals, timely goals at that as well. For Nanaimo, like it feels a little bit odd considering we're coming off of a game where we just talked about them kind of flexing their muscles. This did feel like it was maybe Nanaimo running out of gas in terms of like the previous game. Like, again, another thing we've talked about is like the back-to-backs being tough, especially when travel is involved. That kind of felt like something that plagued Nanaimo a little bit here. And I think you saw it early in this game. Keegan O'Kino got pulled. It was very brief, but I know allows the first 3 shots of the game. Poco ends up going up 6-1 by the end of the first period. So he did get the pull for like 2 or 3 minutes. Boston McDonald, all name team Boston McDonald, comes into the lineup for a couple of minutes before O'Kino gets back in. And then he looked like the goaltender that we're all used to seeing after that. So I think it was just kind of that mental reset. That's what I want to ask you about here regarding that kind of brief timeout that we oftentimes see with goalies in lacrosse where maybe they just do need a mental reset or a quick pep talk from, I mean, goalies they're all a little bit weird, so maybe coaches decide to just leave them alone. Yeah. But I want to know from your vantage point, if you've experienced something like this, like what is that moment like leading up to the goaltender getting pulled when everybody knows it's like this is just going to be brief, like you're still our number one, like you're going back in a couple minutes. What is that moment like leading up to it, and then what is that discussion like on the bench between whoever, whether it's players or coach and said goaltender?
I think like the moments leading up to it is definitely intense. Like the kind of emotions are rising, and as soon as like another goal gets scored, you know, when is the pull gonna happen? And once it does happen, okay, you have him on the bench, and then what do you do with the goalie? Do you leave him alone, or do you know, have a little chit chat with him? And I think it honestly depends on the goalie. From my coaching experience, I would say like you can't just have a blank slate for every single person and treat everyone the exact same. You have to kind of work with the goalie and see how they're feeling or how they're doing. Maybe if they need to be left alone, they need to be left alone and then get back in there. Yeah,
I think goalies freak me out a little bit. What do you say to them? I don't want to say something and then they go and allow the next goal and then it's on me. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that kind of applies with not just goalies. I think that applies with everybody, and you're somebody who can speak to this, I'm sure, as well, on like a player-to-player basis, like coach or goaltender-to-goaltender basis. Like you said, it's not really necessarily just like this blanket one solution fits all kind of thing. It's just kind of that kind of speaks to the coaches that get to know their players and find a way to get them out of any slump, whatever it may be. Speaking of goaltenders as well, Ashton Brown was solid in this game, having a bounce-back game. I mean, he was good against Coquitlam as well, but I'm sure the win felt really good for him after a slate of losing for this team. And this was the second time in his BC Junior A Lacrosse League career where he's had a 50-save performance. His other one, he also got a win. So things look good for Poco when Ashton Brown makes 50 saves. So, just allow a lot of shots, I guess. Yeah. That's Poco's recipe for success. Poco will get back at it in a few days from now, Thursday, June the 12th. They will be on the road to take on the Langley Thunder. We've already talked about that one a little bit. And then they will return home to the John Bailey Arena on Friday, June the 13th, where they will take on the Delta Islanders. Nanaimo finally finished their run of games throughout the week. They will be back onto the floor on Thursday at home, June the 12th, against the Victoria Shamrocks. The classic island rivalry, Nanaimo versus Victoria. It's always a fun one to watch. And then they will get back at it on the road again on Sunday, June 15th, here at the Palace on Portia against the Coquitlam Adanacs. The next, and I believe final one on our list from the last week, Victoria, speaking of the Shamrocks, Victoria versus the Burnaby Lakers. This would be the last of a grueling stretch of games for the Lakers. My oh my, did they have a lot of games over the last week. And it would probably be their toughest test as well. The Shamrocks are no joke. All business, as clearly shown by newly named captain Grayson Peskett. No smiles allowed, Grayson. Burnaby kept things close for now. Wyatt Hofer actually gave the Lakers their first lead. It would also be their last lead. Victoria scored the next 9 straight goals after that one. Speaking of all business, Mr. Celebration, Jet Klassen, that man has no fun, confirmed. Now this goal, I have a bone to pick. Watch number 20 here for Victoria behind the net. That's Hudson Jenner. From behind his own goaltender, he launches this unbelievable pass perfectly into the stick of Cooper Anderson, who then took care of the rest. The assist, though, was credited to Angus Snow. This is my official petition to get Hudson Jenner his assist.
Get that quarterback his
assist, man.
Come on.
17-8 in favor of the green team. Which green team? I'll let everybody else decide. Is it Burnaby? Is it Victoria? You guys can figure that one out. This game obviously got very out of hand very quickly. That being said, I don't think that this score was necessarily as bad for Burnaby as what the numbers may necessarily show. As mentioned, this was a grueling week for the Burnaby Lakers. They had a lot of tough games. They played a lot of lacrosse in not that much time. Have to imagine this was just an exhausted Burnaby Lakers team. 3 games in 5 days. That is, brutal for anybody. I don't care what you say. Burnaby does give a good push towards the end of the game, towards the end of the first period. They do take that 3-2 lead, but then Victoria goes on. I mentioned the 9 straight goals. It was actually a 13-2 run to close out the first and second periods, and then the rest is kind of history at that point. Nobody's coming back at that point, especially against a team like Victoria. This was Victoria's one and only game of the week, so they're a very well-rested team. This was Burnaby's 3rd game of the week, so not quite as rested. There's oftentimes an argument, it more so comes up when it gets around playoff time, but I think it might apply maybe a little bit in this case as well of, is rest good? Does rest keep you fresh, or does rest cause rust? I think in this case for Victoria, there didn't really look like there was any rust. But I would love to hear where you come out on that argument. Is rest good for everybody, or can rest work against you a little bit?
I personally believe that rest is a good thing. I think when you have too much rest, obviously there's going to be some rust, but when you have rest, you're able to, recover faster, and you're able to bounce back after goals and that kind of thing. So honestly, I think this was kind of proven in this game that Victoria won by 17-8. So I think rest is definitely needed. And I think there's this predicament with athletes saying that you always need to keep going and going and going and going without any rest. And that's where I think there's a lot of issues with athletes. Definitely a little bit of rest is good in my opinion.
I'm sure Burnaby would like some of that rest as well.
Yes.
The script kind of flips a little bit here in that Victoria gets very minimal rest after a lighter week, and Burnaby, they still have a tough schedule, but it's only 2 games instead of 3. We'll start off with the Victoria Shamrocks. They'll be back at it Thursday, June 12th on the road. We already talked about that island rivalry between them and Nanaimo. They will head into Frank Crane Arena to take on the Timbermen. Actually, they have 3 straight away games for Victoria in this case. Saturday, they will head on the road to Queen's Park to take on the Salmon Bellies, and then they will close things out on Sunday on the road again against the Langley Thunder. Then we'll go over to the Burnaby Lakers schedule, as mentioned, a little bit lighter, but still 2 games this week. Wednesday, back at home. I'm sure they'll be happy to be back at the Swamp against the Langley Thunder before they close out their week on Saturday on the road against the Delta Islanders. So that does it for the slate of games. That gives us a chance now to look at the BC Junior A overall standings, which can pop up on the screen right now, thanks to the fine folks at Trickshot. Coquitlam sits up top in the first place, as they did last week, a 6-1 record. Victoria just behind them in second place with a 5-2 record. I think that those 2 teams are going to be the 2 jockeying for the first and second overall spots. Yeah. We'll see, though. Still the second half of the season to get through here, but those 2 teams look like they're just slightly a step above the rest at the moment. This is where things get interesting in terms of the playoff picture as we get closer towards postseason time. New West, Nanaimo, and Delta, they're in the 3, 4, and 5 spots respectively. I think that we're going to see some kind of flip-flopping in terms of those 3 teams a little bit. And remember, it's the top 4 teams that make it into the playoffs in the BC Junior A League. And then the bottom 3 teams currently, Poco gets off the schneid a little bit. They end that 4-game losing streak, now sitting in 6th with a 3-5 record, and then Langley and Burnaby close things out with a 1-4 and 1-7 record, or records, respectively. I want to take a look now over at the other Junior A leagues in the Canadian lacrosse standings, I guess you could say. Go over to Ontario first. It's actually the Rocky Mountain League that I'm excited to get to because of that video that I was talking about, that fight we were talking about earlier. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But quickly, the Ontario standings: 6 Nations and Orangeville sit atop the standings. 6 Nations with an 8-1 record in first, and Orangeville 7-1. I believe Trey Deer either has or is about to rejoin the Northman lineup pretty soon, so that's going to be a huge boost, if not already, for them. He is just a dynamic player over there in that league. The Toronto Beaches sit in 3rd overall, 5-3. Whitby Warriors, 5-1. St. Catharines with a 5-3 record. Remember the last time we updated the Ontario standings, I made this point, and I want to just remind everybody again, with the Minto being hosted in St. Catharines this year, they get an automatic bid in. So even if they do finish, say the season ends today and they finish with a 5-3 record, they still get their berth into the Minto Cup. And then the league champion would be the second team going in. But we'll see. Again, the season is still pretty young. I'm sure that they will climb the standings here as we progress. And then the rest kind of fall as they may: Kitchener, Peterborough, Oakville, and so on from that point forward. Now let's take a look at the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League. And before we get to the standings, I want to throw up this video of this player versus goaltender fight. So the goalie for the Edmonton Miners is Tyden Redlick. Hopefully I said that name correctly. The player, or the defender, for the Calgary Mountaineers is Carter Linkletter. And it's funny, for anybody that hasn't seen this video, you can kind of see at the beginning of it, there's this look on Carter Linkletter's face, he's the defender, of before he goes in to engage with the goalie, he's it's like he's licking his chops and waiting for someone to stop him. He's is anybody gonna get in my way? Okay, let's go, let's get this done. And yeah, he landed a couple solid shots very early. Credit to Tyden Redlick, though, for standing in there. Goalies that scrap, man, there's a lot of gear that they have to battle through there themselves. That I'm sure one punch just has to be exhausting to throw. Pretty incredible there. But the Raiders Lacrosse Club, we can throw it over now to the standings page. 6-0. They have yet to lose a game this season. As mentioned, I did potentially jinx the Delta Islanders. Hopefully that doesn't carry over to the Raiders. I actually had somebody say to me recently from out here in BC that they think that the Raiders are the best team in Canada right now. Wow. Which is pretty incredible. They were the Alberta, or the Rocky Mountain representatives over here at the Minto Cup one summer ago. Yeah, that's pretty big news for the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League if the Raiders are currently considered by some to be the top team in Canada. And again, 6-0 record. The Calgary Mountaineers sit in second place, a 5-2-1 record. And Edmonton and Saskatchewan sit in 3 and 4. Saskatchewan still looking for their first win of the season, currently looking at an 0-8 record. And I believe I mentioned this earlier. I believe they also didn't win a game last year, so I might have to take a look at the calendar days.
They're going to be the new calendar.
Yeah, we need a new one since Langley got off the schneid, and we're Langley Thunder fans.
Yes.
So big stuff from last week in the BC Junior A League, and more action is coming up on the horizon. Myself and Megan Kinna will continue to keep you updated, keep you covered for all of that action. Thank you for joining us on another edition of The Breakdown. We hope you'll join us for the next one, and we will see you next time.
Bye.